At just about every theme park and pop-up carnival, there exists a ride with one singular function: to take riders up into the air and then drop them back down again. Such drop tower rides are a staple of the amusement park industry, but in the late 1980s, Disney got the idea to take the simple yet thrilling drop tower ride and turn it into an immersive and heavily thematic experience. A drop tower, but with a story. Decades later, this remains one of the single most original and creative ideas that Disney has ever pulled off, and now in 2022, Disney has 4 such experiences all across their many parks around the globe, which naturally leads me to the question, which one is the best? Just a little bit of unbiased history here before we get into my personal opinions. In 1994, the first thematic drop tower experience that Disney ever opened in Disney's Hollywood Studios. So it was then known as Disney MGM Studios, but whatever. The original Twilight Zone Tower of Terror takes guests through a theme and story inspired by Rod Serling's TV show, The Twilight Zone. Essentially, guests get to live through their very own episode of the show, where they journey into a 1920s hotel in Hollywood that seems to have been suddenly and totally abandoned, and then they end up finding themselves zapped away into the Twilight Zone. The ride was, and of course still is, a massive success, and another version of the ride opened at Disney's California Adventure in 2004. Then in 2006, a very different version of the ride was built in Tokyo Disney Sea over in Japan, still called the Tower of Terror. This version of the ride has no affiliation with the Twilight Zone TV series and instead follows its own unique and original story. The following year, a clone, more or less an exact replica of the California ride, was built in Disney Studios in France. That's in 2007. And then most recently, in 2017, Disney rebranded and rethemed the California Adventure version of the ride to follow a new story based on the characters and lore of the Guardians of the Galaxy, giving us the most recent Disney drop tower, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. 5 rides. I guess technically 4 rides, considering one replaced the other, but I'm still going to rank all 5 of these rides as separate attractions today. Remember, the following list, as always, is just my personal opinion, and I'm just a silly little guy. If you have a different opinion, I want to hear your own rankings down below in the comments. Also keep in mind, I've never had the pleasure of riding the Japan or France versions of these rides, but without further ado, let's get into my list of the 5 Towers of Terror ride drop tower experience, the up and down. Let's do it. Number 5. What I personally consider to be the worst of the drop tower experiences that Disney has to offer is going to be the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror that is in Walt Disney Studios in France. As I mentioned, the Tower of Terror in Walt Disney Studios is a direct replica of the one that was in California, built years before they reskinned it into what it is today. The problem with that is that the one built in California was already a cheaper, lower budget version of the one originally built in Florida. Let me be clear, this is still an outstanding ride. I, again, haven't been on the France one, but I've been on the California one, and I love it dearly. An outstanding ride. It is immersive and just about as scary as a Disney ride can get. It builds tension very, very, very well. It is a thrilling and altogether outstanding experience. It is, however, less impressive than the others, largely because Walt Disney Studios is a less impressive park than most. The facade of the building, which is again an exact copy of the California one that was already a watered down version of the original, in my opinion, sticks out like a sore thumb in the weirdly sparse and undetailed park that is Walt Disney Studios. This ride is also missing the single coolest aspect of the original ride in Florida, but we'll get into exactly what that is in a little bit here. I should note, though, that the story of this version of the ride is a little bit different than it was in the California version of the ride. It specifically follows this one creepy little girl rather than the whole family in bellhop that gets zapped into the Twilight Zone in the California and Florida versions. And that being said, I think the story is also the weakest in the Paris version of the ride. I don't know who this little girl is. I don't speak French. Maybe that plays into a little bit, but I don't really care. Like, creepy little girl. What is this? I don't care. Again, still a great ride, but I'm putting it solidly at the bottom of my list. Number 4 on my list is going to be the California version of that exact same ride, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, as it was in Disney's California Adventure. Again, this ride doesn't exist anymore, it's been reskinned, but I doubt its placement on this list is all that surprising to you given what I had to say about the France version of the ride. Again, the Tower of Terror that was in California was the original design for the one that was later duplicated in France. We got that. But like I said, I think it's a cheaper, watered down, less detailed version of the original ride that was built in Florida. The exterior looks a little cheaper, though I still think it looked better in California Adventure than it does in Walt Disney Studios. You see, the tower was at the very back of the Hollywood backlot, which is a perfect setting as the story for the ride takes place in the Hollywood Tower Hotel. You are in Hollywood, and your brain's already there in Hollywood as you're walking down the Hollywood backlot in Disney's California Adventure. It would loom ominously off in the distance, but around a corner, so it would draw people back through Hollywood towards it as they could just see glimpses of it off in the distance. I thought it was a really cool effect. Plus, it had some lore that tied into posters and stuff on Buena Vista Street that would say like, oh, come see the shows at the Hollywood Tower Hotel. The theming was just really cohesive, and I liked it a lot. It was a solid ride with a solid story, but as I've already said too many times, it was a less detailed, lower budget version of the Florida ride. And so it will also lead us right into number 3 on our list. Number 3 is the ride that now exists where number 4 once stood. Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout in Disney California Adventure. This one might be a little controversial, probably the most controversial placement on my list. I was absolutely devastated. I was furious when I heard that the Tower of Terror was going to be reskinned into a Guardians of the Galaxy attraction. I think it was the most upset that I've ever been at an announcement from Disney. Like I said, the theming of the Tower of Terror was great, and Guardians didn't make sense. This is before we knew that the Avengers campus was going to be a thing. I just thought it was the dumbest idea that I've ever heard. It didn't make sense. They were taking one of the best rides of the whole California Adventure resort, the whole Disney resort, one of the best rides there, and changing it for no perceivable reason into something that would make even less sense as a thematic drop tower. I didn't see it working out. I was mad, as a lot of you were as well. But somehow, I will concede, gladly, they pulled it off. The updated facade of the building is still pretty ugly in my opinion, but that's about the only bad thing I can say about the ride. The story obviously has nothing to do with the Tower of Terror, and instead it's a little side story, a little offshoot adventure between the Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers and whatever the heck Marvel is doing stories. Canon Guardians of the Galaxy story right there in California Adventure. It's such a weird idea. It doesn't make any sense at all. Why, whoever came up with this, Joe Rohde, I don't know, you're crazy, but it kind of works. It really does. The queue is a delightful walk through some of Tavon the Collector's collection. It's filled with Easter eggs, things from the Marvel movies. Figment the dragon from Epcot is hanging out up there hiding in a box. The original Harold the Yeti from the Matterhorn is on display down below. It's a lot of fun stuff to look at, and I love that from Disney. Immersive cues with Easter eggs. It's just so much fun to me. Beyond that, there is a notoriously very cool Rocket the Raccoon animatronic, and the story just works surprisingly well. Something that is particularly good about it is the way that it places riders in an active, starring role, where it becomes each guest's responsibility to help Rocket save the rest of the Guardians. Disney's very good at this in general. They take their riders and throw them into the story. That's something that's always been a goal with the dark rides, especially at Disneyland. This ride does it very well, whereas the Tower of Terror, you were kind of a passerby going through a series of events that had already happened, maybe investigating. It was more immersion and tension than story, where this ride, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, puts riders right there. You are the hero. You are helping Rocket save the Guardians, and it's just fun. That's the biggest thing. It is just fun. It's a major tone shift from a creepy and unsettling abandoned hotel with the Twilight Zone building tension all along the way to this lighthearted experience that has you laughing all along the way. Through the queue, I'll chuckle. Through the pre-show, I'll laugh. But on the ride itself, you just can't help but laugh the whole time. Where it used to really scare people, which I liked. It used to frighten me as a younger kid. The Tower of Terror did. Guardians is not a scary experience. It is about, if you're afraid of drop towers and drop tower rides, this is the one to go to. It's still thrilling. You still get that feeling, but it's just so much fun. It's really well done. And so I'm impressed. It blew away my expectations, and I think it deserves the number 3 spot on this list. I had a really tough time deciding between number 1 and number 2. So this is what I settled on. I might have a different opinion tomorrow, but I placed the Tower of Terror in Tokyo Disney Sea in Japan as number 2 on my list. Tokyo Disney Sea's Tower of Terror, as I mentioned up front, has a totally unique story. It is still called the Tower of Terror, but it has nothing to do with the Twilight Zone. It takes place in the New York American waterfront section of the park in the High Tower Hotel, a building owned by a member of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, which I still really need to do a video on because they get me excited. That's part of the reason why this ride is so good, even if it's just a behind the scenes kind of thing. Anyways, Harrison Hightower, this guy, Disney Sea already is regarded as Disney's most beautiful park. I don't think there's anyone who will disagree with that. It is gorgeous. It is an absolutely stunning park, and this ride is no exception. This building is, I'd say, hands down the most beautiful of the exteriors. It is an absolutely gorgeous building. It's visually stunning on the outside, but also on the inside. And that view that you get when the elevator door opens at the top of the drop, you're looking at a freaking volcano rather than, you know, the Hollywood backlot in California Adventure or whatever. It's a beautiful view. So rather than following the story of some doomed hotel guests that get zapped away into the Twilight Zone during a storm, this ride follows the fate of the adventurer and collector and crook Harrison Hightower. Harrison, again, was a collector, perhaps a thief of ancient artifacts, and as such, the queue is stuffed full of awesome artifacts. It's eye candy in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy is. I mean, you're not looking at references to Marvel movies, but all these little recreations of artifacts from ancient history. That gets me excited. You know how much I love Indiana Jones adventure, temples and artifacts and stuff like that. Yes, big yes from me, and this queue is full of it. One such artifact, however, is a haunted idol that seeks vengeance on the one who stole it, being Harrison, and now being you, because you're dumb and entered the hotel as well, even though it's foreclosed. What are you doing? Get out of there. Come on now. The idol also disappears really impressively. Like, wow, watch this. What? What? That is so cool. I mean, Disney has some good special effects. Maybe I need to see it in person to figure it out, but that is one of the best I've ever seen. Good job, Tokyo Disney Sea. Not to mention, this ride has its own soundtrack and some of the most detailed sets in any Disney ride ever. They went all out on this thing. It's very cool. Spooky doll. Collector of ancient artifacts. Beautiful tower. The ride is, in short, perfect. It is impossibly well done, well executed, apart from one major thing. And this is the one thing that made me pick my number 1 slot over Disney Sea being here at number 2. Let's get into that with the number 1. Coming in at number 1, if you haven't figured it out already, is the original Twilight Zone Tower of Terror at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Florida. Like I mentioned already, the exterior of this ride is beautiful, second to that of Tokyo Disney Sea, but much more beautiful than any of the other drop tower rides. It is gorgeous, it is thematic, and the ride is really well done. It's the original, and they did it the best. I don't know why they didn't build upon these ideas for the other ones. I guess it's just a budget thing. But again, the tower itself is beautiful, and it builds tension better than the other rides do. From the back of the street, Sunset Boulevard, I believe it is, you see this tower, and it pulls you down to the tower, and you get in the queue, and you wind through these uneven and broken steps, and it just starts building tension from the second you see the tower. Florida, as usual, has a lot more space to build than the California park ever did, and so they use that space to wind you through this queue, through this creepy garden, through this dilapidated hotel, building tension all the way. The theming is exquisite. The music that kind of plays, and sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't, is really well done. Same story as the California ride, you know, family gets zapped into the Twilight Zone. As I've been saying, you go in the same maintenance, well, the main elevators are out of service because they already got zapped. So you go in the maintenance elevators, which have seats strapped into them for some reason, don't question it, and you get zapped as well into the Twilight Zone. But I've been teasing one certain thing that this ride does that none of the other rides do. You get in your hotel. You get in your elevator. It's kind of like a hotel because it's so roomy in there. And it goes up, and the door opens, and there's a hallway in front of you. And rather than just seeing some Pepper's Ghost holograms dancing around down there in the hallway, the elevator goes forward. Now, this is actually the first trackless ride system that Disney implemented in the United States. The elevator itself is a trackless ride vehicle, and it goes down the hallway, and there's these awesome special effects, and then a line of light that opens, and really, you go into the Twilight Zone. It is like out of the Twilight Zone to into the Twilight Zone is just distinction in your mind. Although you could argue that you go into the Twilight Zone the second you enter the queue. I'm not arguing that. And then the ride vehicle hooks up to the drop tower elevator. And then you're in a drop tower. It's a moving ride vehicle and a drop tower in one, which is amazing. It throws out your senses when you get back down. You get out of the cage and you kind of like rotate. You just totally lose sense of direction. Whereas the other rides, you unload in the same place that you loaded onto. You are somewhere different when this ride ends. Not only is it very, very cool though, but it helps this ride have the fastest loading times, as rather than having stacked elevators that get loaded and then ride for a little while and then unload and then load again. This is a circle. So you load and that cart goes, and once it starts going down in the hallway, in that same loading zone, you can load the next group because these elevator cars are going in a big circle, essentially. It's genius, and it's so cool, and I think it is deserving of the #1 spot on my list.
Welcome back to those of you who made it, and a friendly word of warning. Something you won't find in any guidebook. The next time you check into a deserted hotel in the dark side of Hollywood, make sure you know just what kind of vacancy you're filling, or you may find yourself a permanent resident of the Twilight Zone.
So there you have it, my ranking of the Tower of Terror, thematic drop tower, Disney experience, whatever you want to call them, rides. These rides have always been among my favorites. I hope to someday ride the Paris one, and especially the Tokyo Disney Sea one. It's so awesome to have such a thrilling e-ticket experience built into a drop tower. It's crazy, it's original, and they are some of my all-time favorite rides on the planet across the board. What do you think, though? As I mentioned up top, I want to hear your thoughts. Give me your own ranking down below. Do you agree with me? Would you switch up a couple? I feel like there's a couple of you that are either going to put Guardians at the bottom or at the top and keep the rest of the list more or less unchanged. That's my prediction. Prove me wrong. Tell me below. I will see you soon. I'm actually going to D23 this year. That is a special announcement. I will be in the parks for the 2 days before D23, and then I will be going to the convention itself. If you see me there, I'll be there with my wife. Please say hi. We'd love to meet you. I will be vlogging that experience. That's probably the next thing you can expect from me. But until then, enjoy. Don't go into the Twilight Zone. I still, one day I will end a video and you'll say, wow, that was a good outro. Today is not that day. Bye.